Beaufort, South Carolina looks almost perfect online. You'll see historic homes, the waterfront, the moss-covered oak trees, and people boating throughout the Lowcountry. But what is it really like to live here? Before you move to Beaufort, there are 7 things you need to understand. One of those being which part of Beaufort may be right for you, how close do you really need to be to the beach, and a few expenses that can catch some buyers off guard. And number 5 is probably the biggest adjustment for people moving into the area from a larger city. Hey everybody, this is Chris Edenfield. I'm with Living in South Carolina and Georgia. This is my YouTube channel. I help people throughout the entire Lowcountry of South Carolina and Georgia, whether it be Beaufort, Port Royal, Hilton Head, Bluffton, and Savannah. If you're thinking about moving to the Beaufort area, subscribe to this channel because I make videos all the time of what it's actually like to live in these Lowcountry towns. And it's not just what you're seeing on a weekend vacation getaway to the area. Okay, let's get into the 7 things I think that are really important for you to understand before you move to this area. So number 1, Beaufort can mean several different areas depending upon what you're talking about with people. You have your downtown Beaufort, you have your Ladies Island, you have Port Royal, Mossy Oaks, Burton, Shell Point, and several communities extending throughout St. Helena Island. All of these communities that I've listed may have a Beaufort mailing address, but the lifestyle can be very different on all of these different locations. Downtown Beaufort gets you historic homes, restaurants, and the waterfront. You can visit Bay Street, you can walk on the waterfront park, and you can feel connected to the center of the town. So let's contrast that to Ladies Island, which is going to give you more of a neighborhood feel. On Ladies Island, you're going to see more newer construction in certain areas and easier access to the Sea Islands as well as Hunting Island. However, depending where you live on Ladies Island and where you work, the downtown bridge traffic can be kind of an annoyance. So Port Royal, on the other hand, has its own small town feel and its own personality. It has its restaurants, it has its cypress wetlands, it even has its own beach called the Sands. And if you're in a certain location in Port Royal, you'll have very easy golf cart access getting around from different locations. This community in Port Royal is connected technically to Beaufort, but it has its very own feel. And now let's talk about areas like Burton and Shell Point. This is areas of Beaufort that you're gonna find a lot more home, a lot more land for your money, while really staying relatively close to downtown. So I guess moral of the story is this: don't just search homes in Beaufort. You need to decide exactly what version of Beaufort fits you best and is kind of the way you want to live. All right, number 2. So Beaufort, yes, is a coastal town, but it's not a traditional beach town like you'll see in other parts of the country. And I think this really surprises a lot of people. So like we said, Beaufort absolutely is a coastal town, but most homes are going to be more than 5 minutes from a large public beach. So the everyday lifestyle or the coastal lifestyle in Beaufort more so evolves around the rivers, the marshes, the creeks, the boating, the fishing, the kayaking, and the waterfront parks. It's not so much of a town where you're driving to the beach, you're gonna lay out. Certainly there's local beaches, including the Sands. That's in Port Royal, but it's about 10 minutes out from downtown Beaufort. And then of course you've got Hunting Beach or down past St. Helena, but it's about a 25-minute drive. So like we talked about, Hunting Beach is probably the primary beach when you think about beach town and you think about the beach. Hunting Island probably is that kind of idea. It's 16 miles from downtown Beaufort, probably takes about 20 minutes driving. So you also have the Sands Beach in Port Royal like we talked about, but it's not the same type of beach experience like Hilton Head Island or Hunting Island. So if your vision is walking out of your house onto a wide sandy beach, you have to be very selective about the location in and around the Beaufort area. If you want to have that kind of access and you want to have that kind of experience, you're going to pay a premium for it. But if you enjoy being on the water, if you enjoy being on a boat, fishing, watching the tides, or living on the marsh, Beaufort is a hard town to beat if you like those things. Personally, I think the distinction is important. The town of Beaufort is never going to be like the town of Hilton Head, and I think that's a good thing. Okay, number 3. The military is such a huge part of the Beaufort culture, and it's so heavily influenced by it. The military is very loved in the town. You have your Marine Corps Air Station in Beaufort, and then you have your Parris Island Marine Recruit Training Depot. And of course, kind of right in the middle of all that is going to be your Naval Hospital. All of those things together give you a steady flow of military people coming in and out of the town. You have your military families, your veterans, your employees, your contractors into this housing market. But with that idea about the air station, you're going to have military aircraft overhead in certain parts of the town. For many of the residents of Beaufort, this becomes kind of a normal sound to them and a common occurrence. Some people, including myself, actually love to see the airplanes flying overhead. But if noise is a major concern for you, then you may want to consider another location. You may want to look carefully at the home's location before you buy. One of the things you'll learn in particular about the airplanes is something called ACUs, and basically it's the flight path. And before you purchase a home in the area, you'll be well aware of what flight path it's on because you have to sign a specific disclosure for that. So we've talked a lot about how this is such a military town, and I think it's wonderful because you get such a diverse and transient population. And you might not normally expect that from a small coastal town. A lot of times you'll meet people who grew up here. You'll meet people who trained here when they were on the Parris Island military base. You'll also have people that trained as Marines, went and had these illustrious careers and want to come back to the town where they all started their careers. I think this eclectic mixture of military and people from all over the country is a huge part of what makes Beaufort's identity so special. Okay, number 4, flood zones and insurance really matter when you're thinking about the price of your home. Every property is different. When people hear about coastal towns in South Carolina, they immediately assume that every part of the coast is in the wetlands. You know, you think about Lowcountry, so that kind of can come to mind. It's actually not accurate. But importantly, you absolutely need to understand everything about the flood zones, about the elevations, the drainage, the insurance requirements, and the history of a specific property you're considering. And this is something I heard from my father-in-law a long time ago. You know, I think it's a really important statement to hear. So if you ever want to know about your lot or your house and want to know exactly more about it from the flooding perspective, it's important to go there after a heavy rain to see rain accumulation, water accumulation on the lot. And that'll kind of give you a sense of what to expect on the lot as a whole. And just circling back to the flood zone, so 2 houses that are next to each other can have very different flood insurance situations. Another thing I always tell buyers to consider is also the wind and hail coverage, the homeowner's insurance, and also whether the property is located in an evacuation zone. Beaufort County advises residents to know their designated hurricane evacuation zone and prepare before hurricane season. So even though I'm talking about insurance and flooding and hurricanes, it doesn't mean you shouldn't buy here. Thousands of people live here and they would not trade it for anything in the world because it's such a wonderful town and area. And it also means you shouldn't fall in love with a home and wait until the end of the process to investigate the insurance. You should start looking at the insurance ahead of time to get a better idea of what kind of property you're really about to purchase. So whenever I have a client, I want them to get the insurance quote with their insurance broker early on in the process because I don't want them to fall in love with a house or a property and then at the end of the process realize, wow, I didn't know it was going to cost this amount for the insurance. And this is especially true with an older home, a waterfront property, or anything that's in sort of a higher risk area. Sometimes the house with the lowest price might end up costing them more to live at in the long run when you compare taxes as well as insurance. Okay, the number 5 thing I think you should know about Beaufort, and I think this is really the one that separates it from a lot of other coastal towns that are nearby. Beaufort moves at a slower pace, and it's such a big advantage for people who live here. Or it could be the biggest drawback depending upon what necessarily you're looking for. And it really depends upon your personality type. Life here moves slower. Beaufort has good local restaurants, community events, boating, golf, outdoor activities, and a beautiful downtown. But it isn't Charleston, it's not Savannah, and it's not Hilton Head. Or maybe a major metropolis area like you're coming from. You're not gonna have endless shopping options, a nightlife, entertainment, or hundreds of restaurants within 15 minutes. For certain specialty restaurants, major concerts, large airports, or even expensive shopping, you may find yourself driving to Savannah, to Hilton Head, or possibly to Charleston. Savannah is approximately 45 miles south of Beaufort, while Charleston, on the other hand, is 70 miles north of Beaufort. And like we've alluded to before, the slower pace is why people move here. I've heard numerous residents that have lived in Charleston and have moved back to Beaufort or vice versa. They compared Beaufort to Charleston, saying that Beaufort now is like Charleston was in the 1970s. 70s. In Beaufort, you can take your morning fishing, you can walk through the waterfront park, you can take your kids to the beach or play golf, or you can ride the Spanish Moss Trail. So if you're not familiar with the Spanish Moss Trail, it's about 10 miles of paved road and connects many numerous areas to the town of Beaufort as well as Port Royal. Beaufort feels relaxed and community oriented. You'll start recognizing people at restaurants, schools, sporting events, local businesses. So if you're someone that needs constant activity, Beaufort might be a little too quiet for you, and we might need to look at other locations. Maybe like Bluffton, maybe like Hilton Head, or maybe Savannah or Charleston. But if you're someone that's trying to get away from the constant activity, Beaufort may be exactly the town for you. Okay, number 6, the home prices in the area vary significantly based upon where you are, whether it's a water view, marsh view, whether you're downtown, whether you're out from town. I would say there's not really like one average home price when it comes to homes in Beaufort. You can find condominiums, smaller established homes, new construction, a historic property downtown, a golf course home, or a home with a multi-million-dollar waterfront estate. And all of these are within the broader border of the Beaufort area. These prices, like we've said before, they vary drastically based upon your water access or your views, your flood zones or elevations, the age and condition of the home, your neighborhood amenities, and your proximity to the downtown area. Also, your lot size matters, whether it's in an HOA, the availability of a private dock. Downtown and waterfront properties are generally going to be a lot more expensive. A lot of the downtown's homes are historic. Buyers need to understand the maintenance costs and renovations. They need to also understand the restrictions and insurance. So if you're someone that doesn't want to take on this challenge, you may want to consider newer construction. You may find that the newer construction is a bit further away than the downtown, and you may want to consider one of the developing communities outside the historic core of downtown. So what if you're someone that wants acreage? Well, you may want to consider Burton, St. Helena, or other parts of northern Beaufort County. That's why I wouldn't consider choosing a neighborhood solely on the Zillow photos. You need to understand kind of what you're gaining with these homes in these neighborhoods, while also considering what you're giving up in each area. Okay, number 7, the lifestyle is the real reason people move to the area. Beaufort isn't necessarily the right choice if you're only choosing the biggest house from the lowest possible price point. The real reason people fall in love with it is the lifestyle. It's being able to go on the boat after work, walking along the waterfront, taking your kids to Hunting Island on the weekends or during the week, riding bicycles underneath the live oak trees with the hanging moss, or spending a quiet Saturday in Port Royal. It's the history, it's the military community, the waterways, the fact that Beaufort still feels like a real town instead of a manufactured vacation destination. Downtown Beaufort was established in the early 1700s, and the historic district remains one of the most recognizable parts of the city. The town is surrounded by waterways and the sea islands that shape the entire area. But if you're someone that really wants to enjoy the outdoors, you have to be comfortable with some of the heat and humidity during July and August. You have to be someone that's used to mosquitoes, tides, storms, but also enjoy the slower pace of life. Beaufort is beautiful, but it's not the same as visiting here for 3 days on a vacation in October. Come during the summer. Drive the bridges during the busy hours. Explore beyond downtown. Visit Ladies Island, Port Royal, Mossy Oaks, Burton, and the Sea Islands. And that's really how you can determine whether or not Beaufort is simply somewhere you enjoy visiting or someone you can genuinely see you spending the rest of your life here. Okay, these were the 7 most important things I think you really need to understand before moving to Beaufort, South Carolina. For the right person, Beaufort offers a combination of history, natural beauty, community, and coastal living that is extremely hard to find anywhere else. But choosing the right part of Beaufort is just as important as choosing the right house. If you're considering moving here, my contact information is below. Whether you're planning on moving in the next month or planning on moving in the next 2 years, give me a call, send me a text, shoot me an email. I'm Chris Edenfield with Living in South Carolina and Georgia, and I'd be happy to help you figure out which part of Beaufort best fits your lifestyle and your needs. I'll see you in the next video.